there's a passion and kind of purpose in the work that you're doing.
Being intentional with your time isn't selfish. It's actually allowing you to show up better and perform higher, if you will.
I'm Dr. Amy Athey. As a licensed psychologist and performance expert, working with elite athletes, C-suite executives, and high performers operating in some of the most demanding environments, I've seen what it truly takes to perform when it matters most. From supporting members of the Naval Special Warfare community to advising leaders in high-stakes, high-pressure situations, one truth remains consistent. The tools that drive performance are the same. You prepare in a way that allows you to show up ready when the moment arrives. Each week, I'll share practical tools and insights to help you strengthen how you think, lead, and perform. Welcome to Still Evolving.
Most people don't struggle to perform because they lack capability. They struggle when the demands in their life start to collide. It can create chaos, confusion. I'm excited today to be joined by Laura Nardella. Laura is a New York City-based sales leader who has built and scaled high-performance teams at companies like Spotify, Reddit, and Lyft. She spent her career in fast-paced environments where expectations are high and the pace doesn't slow down. In this conversation, we get into what it actually looks like to keep showing up when the pressure stacks, how we can set boundaries, how we can recognize when something is off and use that as data, and then also how we can be intentional so that we can keep showing up and continue to perform without getting pulled off into every direction. Please welcome Laura to Still Evolving.
Laura, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you and just very appreciative of your time.
Likewise, thank you, Dr. Amy. I'm excited to chat with you today.
I know we've had a chance to talk a bit about the different aspects in your journey. Certainly a remarkable sales leader and growth leader in your professional lane. But then also you've shared a good bit about what the different chapters in your life and how you've evolved, especially different personal adversities that you may have faced. So I'm very excited today to kind of talk more about how we can continue to show up in our moments that matter and perform, even when the stakes or aspects of that chapter start shifting or changing on us. So why don't we start off? You've operated in very high-performing, high-growth organizations. I'm curious, when you have faced adversity, how do you shift, or do you shift your priorities? And what shifts do you find that really allow you to take care of yourself and still deliver in your work world?
Yeah, I think that's something that so many of us encounter in different facets throughout our lives and our careers. And I think what it comes down to is being intentional with boundaries. And that's something that I learned, not early in my career, but that I'm so grateful that I did. And I think if you don't set them, they'll be set for you, and probably in not the most sustainable way. And being intentional with your time isn't selfish. It's actually allowing you to show up better and perform higher, if you will. And so I think there's a couple ways to think about this. It's one, asking for help when you need it in all areas of life. And I think myself in particular, I've always been independent, self-sufficient, and competent, but there have been times where you do need to lean on others. And then once you kind of flex that muscle, you realize that a lot of times others can do it better than you, right? Like leaning on professionals to lend a hand or to take something off your plate is huge. I think the second piece is delegating and empowering people. Whether that's folks on your team and leaning into, I'm a fan of kind of strength-based leadership, like who likes certain projects, who's energized, who's really good at something, and then giving them the keys to run with that. And then the third is really just reprioritizing. And I know that's such an overused term, but it's being able to take a step back. And someone once told me, slow down to speed up. And I didn't understand it at first, but now I understand it more than ever. And just really say, okay, if I can do a few things really well, that's so much better than doing a million things with one foot out the door, right? So those are kind of the ways I look at it.
I really appreciate that. You mentioned the first one being boundaries. And when adversity or change strikes in our professional or personal life, how we can use this tool of boundaries to help ground us, help also to continue to be able to be present in whichever moment that we're in and how we want to show up in that moment. Can you talk a little bit more specifically of what boundaries looks like to you, and how you have, maybe an example comes to mind in terms of how you started kind of making some shifts there, and how you kind of place that moat, if you will, up around yourself, others, and certainly the demands around you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at first I would be scared to speak up, thinking, oh, this person isn't going above and beyond, or they're not willing to do everything. And then I realized it's, especially in corporate America, people will take whatever they can. And it's up to you to say, hey, I can or can't do this effectively. And one example is at different companies throughout my career, a lot of them have either been headquartered on the West Coast, or a lot of my partners that I've worked with are out there. And as you know, it's a different time zone. So oftentimes meetings get set up in the evenings. And I have in the past taken those meetings and reshifted and canceled my dinner plans or skipped my workout or whatever it is to attend that meeting. And the reality is, unless it's urgent, one, there's a window throughout the day where we're both in working hours. So that meeting can usually be shifted. Or two, usually that meeting's not urgent, so it can be rescheduled. Or three, maybe there's somebody that can tag team and join it for me, and I'll join the early morning meeting, on the East Coast at a different time. And so really being able to navigate that and do what's best for the business to get the job done, but also say, hey, there's no need for me to be getting on a call at 9 p.m. if it's not urgent. So those types of things I've learned. And look, it's not always well received. I've worked for people who are work around the clock and think that that's how it has to be, a consistent grind. And I've learned to be mindful of that type of culture. And is that really where I want to be putting my efforts? Because I think we can work smarter without having to work harder.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great myth out there that high performance equates to this grind, right? That it only means faster, bigger, more, right? And I'm reminded when I was working with military leaders that success is defined by accomplishing the mission and taking care of the people. And if you do the former and not the latter, you didn't meet the equation. So I really appreciate how, when you take a look at quote unquote the problem set, which was, I've got this meeting and it's conflicting with other priorities in my life. Like you said, whether it's connecting with people over dinner, getting a workout in, what are the possible solutions to that? And oftentimes we kind of fall into what's habitual and what's familiar, which is saying, yes, I'll be at the meeting, right? And I appreciate the pause there, and then the consideration of like, wait a minute, are there other alternatives that should also be considered? And one of those also includes partnering with your team, like they're the inverse, right? Like they're early in the morning, right? Facing perhaps similar challenges of trying to get kids out to school or their own workout in if they choose in the morning. So very much appreciate how you can do this together. It doesn't have to be always just a solo challenge that you're facing. I'm curious, In moments where those pressures kind of really collided, what do you notice about yourself? Like what are some of the signals that perhaps you get that the pressure on perhaps the load or the demands in your personal life and the professional life are colliding?
Yeah, I found that when I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, that I start to, in my head, become a little bit resentful of the work that I'm doing, like that it's bleeding into different areas of my life. And that is a huge signal that I need to take a pause and reevaluate. And I think it's so easy for all of us today to stay busy, right? We're being thrown a million things, the climate of the world, that there's just so much going on. But it's a lot harder to stay intentional about what's moving the business. And I think it goes back to taking a look at what's on your plate and saying, like, what is actually moving the business forward? Because some of these daily tasks are busy work, right? And aren't actually the meaningful behaviors that's going to take us to the next level. And I think that separates a strategic leader from somebody who's just more operationally focused. And that's certainly a challenge that I've had to overcome in the past, is thinking, okay, let me check the boxes, get everything done, not miss a deadline. But then hindsight is like, well, was I really mindful and meaningful with what I delivered, right? Or was it just, let me get this done? So that's something I think a lot about when it comes to pressure, because if there's pressure over, say, revenue numbers, there's usually a very clear focus of what we need to be doing, be it meeting with clients or whatever it is, to move that needle. And some other things can maybe shift to next quarter, and being able to identify that and also communicate that is key.
Absolutely. I appreciate you started off with an important data signal, and that was your emotional state, right? You shared that you're aware that if you're starting to feel resentful, it's a moment to take pause and say, what's going on? Like, what is going on that I'm having this emotional reaction? Sometimes it is, as you were talking about, that we're kind of falling back to this automatic state of just kind of checking boxes and getting things. And I appreciate then in that pause, you're able to kind of take a step back and say, what's really important right now? Like, if this isn't my objective, what is really important to accomplish this mission? So very helpful reminders. Emotions can be powerful, powerful data if we just kind of take a step and use it as such, rather than kind of getting stuck and kind of just staying there in that hairball, right? Like, and just getting grumpier and grumpier because resentment of the state. I was like, wait a minute. What can I learn from this? What can I take away from this? What can I use to kind of continue to evolve and be able to not just make an impact, but also feel more fulfilled in the work that you're doing? Absolutely. Was there anything that you found that you've had to let go of when those pressures kind of collided, or kind of where you wanted to be able to keep showing up, but you had the demands personally of whatever was going on in life, and then you also had the professional demands, and certainly many of those were fulfilling, right? Like, it's not just you're just checking a box to show up for a paycheck. There's a passion and kind of purpose in the work that you're doing. But did you have to let go and kind of make a more significant shift in how you were showing up?
That's such a good question. And it's actually really thought-provoking, because it's probably happened in the moment without me almost realizing. And I think thinking about those moments, I think like letting go of who I am, or separating who I am from what I do, is really important, because when your identity is too closely tied to your outcomes, that's when I think it can be an emotional roller coaster. And we shouldn't only be defined by our career or our family or our whatever, right? We all have these different buckets that come in to make us who we are. And so when things get wild in our lives, it's really staying true to, okay, these are my values. Like, I remember working with a coach once to really go through a lot of exercises to identify my 5 core values in life. And I'll tell you, they come into play at work too. And I often share them with my teams and try to be really transparent as to my thought process behind things. So taking away, like, hey, me as one person is going to make or break this company is too much pressure to put on anyone, right? You know, unless maybe you're the CEO, which I'm not yet. But separating that a little bit helps to regulate your nervous system and remember, you know, at least what I do, I'm not saving lives every day. It's super important, and we are hired to do a job, but taking things a little bit lighter really helps me.
Well, I mean, I think you're spot on when we confound who we are and what we do, right? Like the added weight, it comes to decision making, to even the smallest of tasks, right? Like if you don't get that one piece of busy work done, but yet your identity is tied to these outcomes, these tasks, then it is going to double down the pressure that you might experience in whether or not you completed it or not. It also really can impact, like, if there's a misstep, right? Like, which we're human and we make the best decisions with the information we have at the moment, but more often than not, that data set is very incomplete, and we're trying to make decisions to keep going. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But if it's about the decision, it could be frustration in the moment. It could be disappointment in the moment. And truly then that emotion kind of like a bad storm, it kind of comes in, comes out. But if it's about somehow that's reflective of who you are as a person, then all of a sudden the intensity of that storm, it can last for days, weeks, right? It can really like pull you down. So I really appreciate the focus on separating, like, this is what I'm doing. This isn't who I am. And it sounds like that was a great exercise also to take a deeper dive in that and exploring your values and your purpose with that coach. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah, I agree. That storm analogy is a great one. I think it's so spot on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Emotions are, when things happen in life, it's important to remember we're emotional beings, right? So we're going to have our reactions. If it's something exciting or like, you know, you hear somebody, a good friend got a promotion, like you're going to feel that excitement for them. And then that kind of goes away. But with negative emotions, we always, we expect not to have them in some ways, or that we need to mitigate that or minimize it or deny it. No, like if your friend just got laid off, it's going to be normal to feel bummed or disappointed or, you know, and have that weight. That's normal, right? And if you're going through it yourself, it's normal to feel disappointed, frustrated, or angry about that situation. And yet truly emotions can pass too. Our thoughts can come and go, and we don't have to kind of stay entangled with them and kind of wrestle with them to the point where it really ultimately will weight us down and kind of pull us down with this like spiral. We can breathe through it and let the storm pass, and then have a moment of greater clarity where, like you said today, what are your values? What are the possible courses of action that I can take right now to be able to accomplish this mission, this task, take care of my people? And so I think there's a lot that can be done once we've moved through that emotion to have that clarity. And then you're able to take that courageous action that you need, whether it's, like you said earlier, the boundaries that you need to ensure you uphold to be able to take care of yourself and show up in the moments that are matter for the company, or perhaps other ways that you communicate with your team. So absolutely. Laura, I like leaving our audience with like that immediate and actionable strategy. So I can kick around these ideas, whether it's how we can find clarity in chaos, or how can we deal with this emotion, or when the stakes feel high, how you can lead your team. But some people just want to know, like, okay, what the hell can I do, right? Like, I just need something I can try today because things feel shifty. Maybe the stakes feel like everything's coming at them. Is there something that you do in your daily or weekly routine that helps you to continue to show up? And specifically today, we were talking about like when the stakes feel high and like it feels chaotic, or those personal and professional needs, goals, load, demands kind of collide, how you can kind of continue to evolve. Is there something that you use to ground you and help sustain that high performance?
Yeah, there is. And this is something that I kind of put into practice last year when I was experiencing an unexpected challenge. I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and very unexpectedly had to navigate fighting through that while also maintaining a very high pressure job where I was responsible for a big team and a lot of revenue. And that wasn't going away. And my coach at the time practiced breath work with me. And I know you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, which I love. And it is such a very quick but effective way to ground you. And I remember one time I walked into a meeting with her. It was virtual. I was 5 minutes late. My mind's in a million places. And she was like, all right, close your laptop, shut your eyes, and let's do this. And I was kind of like, well, can we just jump right in? Like, there's so much going on. And she's like, trust me. And so we did. And the exercise took less than 5 minutes. And I woke up feeling like I had just done an hour-long yoga class after a 12-hour sleep and was like on the beach on vacation. It was wild.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so she taught me how to do it just in moments. You could even be in a boardroom with other people and doing it, and no one's going to know. But yeah, it allows that overwhelming feeling to kind of dissipate, and that moment of clarity can help guide you to what actually needs to be done. So that's something, it's snackable, but it's anyone can do it at any time. And so I'd like to share that because I wasn't necessarily a believer in it. And now I do it every day.
Now it's like in your back pocket. I love it. Absolutely. And in that breath work, having the focus on that exhale, being able just to take those long exhales, ideally, if you could work up to a count of 6, and then just allowing like that deep diaphragmatic expansion of an inhale in slowly, could also be a count of 6. It can be tremendously powerful. And it really just helps neurophysiologically just kind of pull back that gas pedal, so that then really those other parts of our brain that we need to be able to sort through and make decisions, they are more activated. They're not clouded by all of the stress hormones and emotional, the emotional charge, if you will, going on. So very much appreciate it. Also a fan of that tool, and it's a great takeaway for our audience. Thank you so much, Laura.
Of course.
Our performance happens in moments, not just managing everything at once. And oftentimes chaos and feeling overwhelmed can happen when those demands hit us from all angles. I talk about hitting or taking all of life's punches, maybe at home, at work, in your community. It's easy to feel overwhelmed. And yet life keeps moving. More keeps being asked of us, and we have more opportunities to show up. When I think about what can help when you're feeling overwhelmed, a couple things come to mind. One, certainly how we regulate that emotion and regulate the perhaps experience, the intensity that comes with perhaps fear or anger or feeling overwhelmed. Taking some deep breaths and finding that centering composure. But also, really importantly, when life starts swirling and it feels like chaos, taking a moment and refocusing on what matters now. We have a lot of signals around us, and without clarity, it just becomes noise and very distracting and pulling us further and further away from that moment that matters. So whether it's internal noise, maybe signals our emotional state, or external noise, perhaps the feedback that we have from loved ones, patterns of behavior and response. All of that information can be very informative, but certainly not if we're just kind of bouncing between all of it. It becomes chaos. So for clarity, what can you do? We can use the tool of asking ourselves what's important now and come back to the moment at hand. What was that cue that can really help you show up? And it is informed by the information and insights that you have from all those signals around you. Really, the ability to show up using those tools of energy regulation to be composed and then refocusing so that you can be clear can really help us step into that moment.